files. 2 words. And everyone knows what I mean. The island. It's the same thing. Everyone knows exactly what I mean. Different nouns, same psychological reaction. And why? Because language isn't just words. Language is an amalgamation of core and context. So what did I say? Technically, a single definite article and a noun, the and files, the files. But what did I actually communicate? A compressed symbol, the iconic representation of an unspeakably evil human being, victims, innocent and terrorized, exploitation and possibly even murder, power and secrecy, moral violation so profound that it could shake the foundation of the world that we live in, all in just 2 syllables. And that right there is where I'd like to start. Not the gossip, not the dopamine hits, not the trending commentary or incendiary rhetoric or AI bullshit, but the moment when the public mind locks onto 2 words and instantly constructs an entire world of conspiracy around them. Now, do you see what happened right there? I said conspiracies, not conspiracy theories. There's a difference. Now, some of you are already trying to feel whether I'm leaning right or left, blue or red. Is he saying it with conviction or dismissiveness? Conspiracies versus conspiracy theories is not the topic of discussion today, nor are my political views. They're irrelevant to discussing the process of analysis, and that's why we need to take a deep breath and slow down. Polish-American philosopher Alfred Korzybski said, "The map is not the territory." And what he meant by that was that the story about something is not the thing itself. The map is not the territory. The map is the map of the territory. So labels compress reality, and compression always leaves something out. So when we say the files, we're already operating on a map, a symbolic shorthand for something far more complex: documents, images, correspondence, testimony, allegations, inferences, commentary layered upon commentary. But the symbol becomes emotionally charged. And when the symbol becomes charged, people begin reacting to the map as if it were the territory. Now you layer on top of that political gamesmanship and clickbaiting, and now we're making minestrone. Dr. Clotaire Rapaille, the cultural anthropologist, in his book, The Culture Code, he argues that certain words and symbols trigger deep tribal codes. His metaphor is the logical cortex surrounding a deeper emotional middle layer, the limbic, and then a reptilian core, kind of like an intellectual turducken. But what he says is that certain themes bypass rational analysis of the cortex, activating our reptilian brain and creating severe tension in the emotional limbic system in between. Things like sex, children, survival, violence, power, secrecy. These aren't neutral topics. They're culturally and biologically loaded. And when triggered, the result is explosive. So when somebody says the files, it doesn't register as neutral information. It registers as contamination, as threat, as a biological and existential emergency. And this is where everything we've been discussing for the past couple of months begins to come into play. Things like perception versus perspective, cognitive bias, metacognition, critical thinking in general. So here's the thing. The more shocking and explosive the circumstances, the more visceral and emotional the content, the more likely it is that the scaffolding of your rational mind is going to collapse. And therefore, the more critical it is that your analysis be disciplined and dispassionate. That's not because you don't care, but expressly because you do. So let me make something clear. I don't know what's fact or fiction. I don't know who is involved and to what extent. And I'm not going to pretend that I do. But for now, I do know this. The emotional response is completely understandable. The disgust is natural, and the pressure to have answers feels enormous. But Without proper framing and context, it's only a matter of time before reactive outrage outruns rational thought. And when outrage outruns thought, mob dynamics begin to devolve into mob rule. And mob rule, well, we all know that story and how it goes. First comes certainty, and then comes the necessary narrative completion to wrap it all up. And then there's guilt by association and the demands for punishment and revenge. And this is all before verification, context, or due process. It's easily justifiable to want to punish evil, but without discipline and context, that slope gets slippery. The lines get blurred, and soon the suspicious, the less likable, and even the innocent begin to look guilty. This series is not going to start with accusations or even suppositions. It's going to start with observation. Because before we analyze the material, we have to analyze the analyzer. That's double loop learning. Proper forensic analysis is only accurate when your instrumentation is precisely calibrated. So let's get calibrated. Before we argue about territory, we must understand the map. So today, we're not adjudicating. I'll leave that to the influencers, the rage baiters, the pundits, legitimate and otherwise. The next episode, we're going to map the default human response. Cognitive failures that happen when disgust hits the brain and the internet just hands you a megaphone. And then, only then, we can apply some metacognitive protocols. And not as entertainment, but as a thought experiment. And I know that may sound a little harsh and clinical, but I mean it with the deepest respect for the victims. We owe them that. Because outrage is easy. The victims deserve justice. The guilty absolutely deserve punishment, but the innocent also deserve a chance. And justice requires something very unfashionable in this age of instant certainty. That's discipline and sequence. This is not a commentary on politics. It's a commentary on human behavior. The behavior of those in the files and ours. And that's food for thought.